them that have been actually bamboozling the people. NASA is lies. This is the greatest storyteller ever told. They're liars. The universe as you know it, reality as you know it, does not work that way. They know what time it is. You don't. So what's getting ready to happen at this point is if you don't understand what they have planned for you in the future, when it drops, and it's going to drop as a gigantic light show, when it drops, you're not going to be ready for it, or those who are in the conscious community will have some kind of idea of what it is that they had planned, like Blue Beam, and what it is that was said in the progression there that would bring them ever more control. Because you have to have the chaos before control. And if you remember, Get Smart was dealing with chaos and control. So you have
Hmm.
to understand that the chaos they're about to deal with is them setting up the necessary type of chaos for them to gain more control over you. If you're not prepared for what time it is, if you don't understand how the plan and how the script has been written, and why it is that there's so many clueless people following along, because ain't nobody that is into this illusion that's fighting against the truth, because truth, again, we say it has three stages. It's ridiculed, persecuted, and then accepted as a matter of fact reality. And that's essentially where we are right now. It's persecuted at this point. So you have to understand, in the persecution, that's the crucible. Ignorance was created specifically by the Creator so that in the knowing that you acquire, the knowing then is given to the Creator. The Creator is all. So the all can't know itself. It only has to retract upon itself. And in that subtraction of itself, it goes to sleep. And we are the dream of the Creator, knowing itself. I know it sounds crazy, but if you understand it like we do, my students do in the classes, you'll
No.
understand what I'm talking about. So please understand that I'm not giving, I'm not going to give you doom and gloom only. I'm going to open your eyes to exactly what you need to make a good decision, a logical decision of how you want your life to be from this point forward. And the first illusion, the first lie that they perpetrated on us was the heliocentric hoax. That's the mother of all conspiracies. From there, every other conspiracy had been grown, because they destroyed tens of thousands of years of what we called astrotheological science. For instance, I'm going to use a lot of what the Bible has to say. Why? Because you know that I broke down the Bible ace deuce tray, and I've always said to young brothers and sisters that the Bible essentially was a book of science that they turned into a book of prose. And what they've done is they've hidden scientific truths about you being the ultimate technology of God. What the so-called satanic energy is to put you into an artificial based consciousness system, which they call AI, or artificial intelligence, and I call it atrocious forming intelligence. And that you have to understand what it is they're getting ready to do. They don't have the ability to time travel using this technology. They don't have the ability to leave the body and travel through what they call the universe, or what we call the omniverse, and visit other domed realities beyond ours, where there are other entities that live beyond the Arctic. We are under the dome, but there are different ways for portals for us to go through to visit other domed realities, species, and that's what Admiral Byrd found out when he ended up by the ending part of the dome. And we're going to show you that the dome is real because the U.S. military affirmed it, and all of the so-called scriptures that were essentially now saying, oh, it's just religion, it's just beliefs. No, the Bible was turned into a belief system. It was in the primary stages of it, was they were taking different scientific theses that they called epistles.
Hmm.
And these epistles and so-called parables were actually scientific theses the way we taught it. See, we didn't estrange ourselves from nature and put up a whole lot of chicken scratch and call that quantum reality. We brought ourselves into nature knowing that we were a part of it. So the European man, he has what I call, when he observes something, in his early stages of taking or stealing the sciences of the ancients, he then grew an ego that allowed him to actually become something called use his brain to do something that I call impositional analysis. Now, what is impositional analysis? I call it impositional analysis because he would impose his perception of what was real upon the thing that he was actually investigating. So he
Hmm.
would give names and give
Good name.
attitudes and put his own name. Just imagine you're cutting
Look,
open, yeah, you're cutting open a person, a human being, and then giving your name to certain parts of the
let
organ
me let
body.
me give you an example, right? I was watching a special on Netflix called Chimp Empire,
Hmm.
right? And the European has an entire narrative and script. He named each one of these chimps, right? He played it out like it was a reality show. This is
Mhm.
what this one is thinking. This is what this one is doing. They wanted to knock the alpha off.
Yeah.
The alpha had relationships with these women. This is how they got along. And I'm like, are they communicating with the chimps? How are they interpreting
No, he's
all of these
identifying with
things?
the chimps. No, he's
He went to
identifying with them.
GPT and created a script
Mhm.
and then plays the script out and just uses role acting to
He's
act out a
identifying.
script. And that's the same thing that he does. That's the same thing he's doing with dinosaurs. He's just in his imagination.
Hmm.
And the Western man is telling you we don't know how the mind operates because they haven't deciphered or decoded the brain. So again, I've been baffled because I've been asking people, how are you listening to someone who only operates out of one hemisphere of their brain, where they tell you we don't acknowledge Eastern spirituality, even though they, adhere
They
to
twisted
Eastern
it.
religion, right,
Yeah.
through a Western
Hmm.
lens, but that lens is not incorporating hemisync. They're not operating out of both hemispheres of their brain or both hemispheres of the planet. So something is always being suppressed,
Hmm.
right? There's always a truth that's unattainable to them because they don't deal with spirituality. They don't deal with right hemisphere, divine feminine principles or energy or perspectives. Why are we following Cyclops?
Yeah, well, essentially, you have to look at the fact that the paradigm under which we are functioning was set by him. Like I said, his is impositional analysis. He puts his own perception on it and then identifies himself through what he perceives to be real. He's now waking up slowly, but we have to remember how our scientists worked. Where he worked through impositional analysis, we worked through intuitional analysis.
Mhm.
So we did not identify that person or those things that we were studying through the lens that the European did and imposed his will upon what that is. We waited for the thing to identify itself. And in that, you'll see that the way we represented our sciences was not in some abstract chicken scratch that they call quantum science and physics and all of the nonsense they write on the board that takes up an entire chalkboard. All we had to do was to wait until it was identified, and through our envisioning, we would then understand what that particular animal meant, what this meant, what that meant. And that's why we always used animals because they were the school that taught us. Animals teach us because they don't come out of, in the wild, they don't come out of their own instincts. And the great, the ones who are ancient people, we used to study the animals because they had particular personalities that we then affixed to ours. And so throughout, if you look at the pantheon of ancient Chem, these animals that you see, the ibis, the alligator, the hippopotamus, the
The
hawk,
baboon.
all of
Right.
these, right, had representations of what we were. We did not estrange ourselves from nature. We invited it into our analysis. And so now we're seeing him trying to get real close because you see his scientists now are backing away from the old systems and trying to get into the consciousness of the animals. And now you'll see the animals are actually acting the way they did with us. That's why Haile Selassie could sit with two lions on his throne as
Hmm.
pets because we had the language. That's why the so-called Aborigines of Australia knew the language of the kangaroo they called them or the hawk, and the reason why the European actually had the chance to conquer Australia was because one of the natives gave them the secrets because they couldn't find food, they couldn't do anything, and they found out that the eagle would warn the kangaroo when the European came close.
Mm,
So they started killing the eagles in Australia. So
mm,
that's the way the European got in. So there's a lot of things that we're
mm.
not teaching our people because we're too busy with with these things that essentially are taking away our perception and consciousness and focus. And instead of dealing with the original technology that the ancients have taught us, especially as it lives today in the Dravidian cultures, we don't have an empathetic connection to humans. We don't have an empathetic connection to life itself.
The
And
nature.
so when I begin to speak about in the webinar about how indoctrinated we are, we have to first diffuse whatever that light is that they dimmed inside of us. We have to take out the blinding light of ignorance that had indoctrinated into us, and we have to study how deep the indoctrination goes in the first part of my lecture, and then we're going to get into the meat of the matter. There's a lot of reading that I'm going to put in. There's a lot of webinars, videos that I
Good.
found on the web that I'm going to introduce as part of the lesson plan, so that it's going to be something. I mean, I'm going to say to you, if the audience, when you do, if you do come, and I do suggest that you do, um, please make sure that you could take snapshots. I don't like anybody, taking my work and using it, to pay their rent with and so forth. Please don't do that. It takes me months. It took me 4 months to put this particular program together for you. All right. So I'm just here to guide the way. So what I would like you to do, there's certain snapshots you could take of your screen so that you can have for your own personal records to teach your children to have to discuss and so forth. I've put a lot of effort into this particular lecture, and you're going to see it. And prepare. Also, don't eat too heavy. Take your juice plus, drink a lot of water, because you're going to be at that screen and you're going to be paying attention for at least, I would say, 8 to 11 hours.
Mm. Another one of those classic 11-hour Dr. Valentine lectures. The family, they act like they missed out. Look, you can make up for it, y'all. You know what I'm saying? Tap into this 11-hour demonstration. We are more than certain that the Bible will definitely be laying it out. Ironically, yesterday there was a major announcement by NASA about their the research that they have been doing into UFOs, or unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs. And not surprisingly, they came out and said, well, we observed some out of the 144 cases that have been reported, and majority of them can be explained and some of them can't, but we still have inconclusive um, ideas about what exactly is going on. So their report was no report. Um,
Yeah.
it seems like a super duper major distraction and a cover up. And once again, because of my teaching, my training, my observation, and my initiations, I don't believe anything that they say. Can you give us a little background information in regards to the beginning of Nassau? What were Nassau's origins and its beginnings? Where did it come from?
It started with the Nazi von Braun
Hmm.
and Operation Paperclip. That was
Yes.
actually the setup by the British and the Americans. They wanted the science that they had. In fact, the atomic bomb was actually being built by the Germans before the Americans got hold of it.
Right.
And so what they did was they attacked. There was a lot of subversive and covert operations that were going on during World War II,
Hmm.
and they got in contact with them and told the Nazis, especially the scientists, that it was inevitable that they were going to lose. What happened was the bankers pulled out of financing the Nazis, and so what happened is the Nazis were running out of the money. You remember that Hitler Schicklgruber was actually a Rothschild, and the upper echelon of the Nazis were actually family and kin of the international bankers who actually set up the Federal Reserve System.
Hmm.
So it was pretty much a nepotistic thing with these Nazis and war and so forth. And you got
Right.
to remember too, the Germans, the Queen of England is a German.
Yes.
You have to understand that most of the so-called Windsors, they
Yeah, we
took on
broke
the
that down.
name of Windsor Castle after the Coates,
Coxburg, right? The Cox.
Habsburg or
Yeah.
Coburg
Okay.
was the
Right.
ones who actually came over from Germany.
Bavaria. Right.
Right. So what happened then is they put it out to it. First of all, Hitler was flown out. A female pilot flew Hitler out of Germany, and he migrated to South America, where he went to first to the Vatican. They call it the Vatican rat lines, where they were bringing in the Germans and the Nazis. And Hitler learned the superficial mass, the mass that the Catholics do, which I was dealing with as an altar boy back in my days. So the what they did was they had him be a priest in a small enclave in South America. I believe it was in Argentina. After that, they brought him over into where he lived until about 104 years of age. He lived in Baltimore, right outside of Washington D.C., and most people don't know that. But in the interim, they began to take and get Nazis out of Germany, and it was a scramble to get the Nazi scientists who had advanced technologies. And so Russia and the United States began bargaining for who they wanted. And himself, von Braun himself essentially went to the United States of America where he set up NASA. Now you got to remember too that the Ashkenazim were very heavily involved in the Nazi Party as well. And the thing about it was that the setting up of what do you call it, NASA or NASA was actually Nasi, or it was taken from the so-called ancient Hebrew or the so-called what do you call it, the Hebrew alphabet again, the gematria. It was taken
Yeah.
from the gematria and it meant illusion. Okay, so NASA was set up essentially based on to bring von Braun, who was the king of the rocket science at that time, to bring him and his entourage of over what it must have been about 113, which essentially came over in the rat lines and set up the Nazis. In fact, one of your presidents of the United States, um, George Scherf, was the Hitler Youth, and he was the one who essentially was sent over to monitor Tesla's work. In fact, Tesla was the one who gave him a nickname. And you ever see that cartoon with the little monkey? I forgot the name of the little monkey. And
Curious George.
Curious George. That's
Yeah.
Curious George was George
So
Sher.
you're talking about George Bush with George
George
Sher.
Bush. Yeah,
So
George Sher.
you
Yeah. And
explain and
so he, what happened was when since he was working with Tesla, the word is that there was a guard, one of the personal guards of Hitler. His name was Stempfler, not Stempfler. Stempfler was the one who wrote Mein Kampf. Stempfler was the he was the Jesuit priest who wrote Mein Kampf for Hitler. And so what happened, if you're looking at the situation where they began to create NASA and to infiltrate through the CIA. CIA again was set up with by the Vatican, and so you have to understand that everything that you're looking at today was actually a mending and a blending of the Nazis, who essentially came
right.
over here and set up with George Scherf. You notice that George Scherf became the head of the CIA.
Yeah,
You
right.
see, it's all connected
Because
together.
I was gonna speak about Prescott Bush, and then I was gonna speak about OSS
Yeah.
being precursor to
Mhm.
CIA, and
Yeah.
how all of this always ties in. The dope always seems to find itself tied in somehow, because that, of course, is the black. That's the funding, right? So that's the black ops. Prescott Bush was running opium,
Mm-hmm.
um, during the when the British had the opium running out of China, as you explained, and we've done the research and corroborated all of this information. That's where the skull and bones comes from.
Mm-hmm.
All of that Yale money, and then his son, who later on becomes George Bush, becomes the head of the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Then, ironically enough, they start dabbling the coke. You know what I'm saying? And then they show you, we could even go further back to the French Connection when the Americans made the deal with Lucky Luciano in the 40s, right? For the troops to go up through the back of North Italy. And then they had to make the deal with Lucky Luciano because Lucky Luciano had to tie to the mobsters in Italy.
They
He
ran the
made
ports.
yeah, he made that possible. And then they turned over the dope trade to him through the French Connection and said, we're going
Right.
to turn our backs. They showed that in Godfather of Harlem when they brought over the 100 keys of dope,
Mm-hmm.
and then our people been on a doozy ever since.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Mm-hmm.
So the CIA has always been involved in these rat line operations, these black op operations. You know what I'm saying? To create a whole third economy. This that runs up in the trillions. So the dope always has funded their clandestine operations, specifically their ones dealing with what we might consider to be Nassau, and then you know to 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 tap into it. I don't know if you're familiar with Stephen Greer and where
Mm-hmm.
he speaks about the black ops
Yeah.
and how this information goes to the highest levels that even presidents are not even briefed.
I know.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I
That
wanted to bring back to the UFO situation to understand how that works because we got to tie that into Bluebeam.
yeah,
Um,
this is yeah.
yeah, you have to tie that into Bluebeam to understand how the Vatican is working that particular line so that they can get the people who are connected and hypnotized by religion to believe that the second coming is a reality.
Hmm.
So when we start talking about the technology for the UFOs and any of the people coming out to speak about that, and you start talking about how the CIA and national security and so forth, all of them are part of the elite, the 0.1% that's being run not by the 13 bloodlines that we know of, Rockefeller and Rothschild. These guys are essentially the business, the I guess the what do you call those? The CEOs of the company, the owners of the company are the 13 families behind them, the Aldoblandinis, the Orsinis, the Great Pope, who is Pepe Orsini. These are the people running the Black Pope and the White Pope. So you have to understand
Hmm.
that there is a what I call the incunabula, which is why they use the baby Christ, and you see them, the Pope, doing this ritual with the baby, and the fact that they slaughter and eat and drink the blood. They're into the infant Jesus, where they talk about him being crucified and sacrificed, and everything about this religion is about blood, and they're the ones who worship Lucifer. They have a chapel in the Vatican that is built to Lucifer, which is why they essentially are looking to the skies to find out whether or not they're going to open it up again. The Vatican essentially is looking to the skies to see if those who are the watchers are going to open up that dome and flood them out again. That's their fear. Now, you remember at the time when they were trying to break through to see what the dome was actually made of, they had these what you call I forgot what it's called. It was Operation Dominic, which was to essentially send up nukes to try to blast through the dome because they couldn't. If you notice,
Hmm.
they haven't gone into outer space. It's a bunch of crap, and I'm going to prove it on that date. You're going to see all of the lies exposed around NASA, and you're going to look at them as nothing more than Disney for adults. That's all it is. It's a bunch of crap. It's Disney for gullible adults. And so what we're going to learn, and I know I'm jumping back and forth because we should have a
Nah,
short
you good.
time. Yeah, that we're going to learn a lot about what our reality is structured around, and we're going to learn how time works. You know, you've heard me here many times, and my students know that thought is time. and that the human thought, and the instincts of animals are time. That's how time as an element manifests itself. Just like fire, air, water, and earth manifests itself as sight, sound, smell, and taste. Time is an element. Without it, a creation does not happen on third density. Third density is a pulse. That's why your heart is a pulse. That's why your breathing is a pulse. That's why everything seasonally is a pulse, because that pulse essentially is representative of the yin and yang keeping balance. So your heart is
Mm-hmm.
not doing a four term, it's doing a 6/8. That's why jazz was so easy for us to be able to play. We played in a 6/8 feel,
Say,
you
yeah,
see. So what I would say to people is tune in, please. I'm not sure if our good brother Rich has put up the link for
the link,
everybody
yeah.
to, yeah, to have, please, because again, like, I want you all to get in at the cheaper price, so that you can get in, and at the discount price before it goes up on the 15th of this month.
Yes, indeed.
Mm.
I know that Brother Rich and King Simon was dropping a link a second ago. Family, if you see the link, please click on the link, grab your tickets, right? Get your tickets, get a seat in the building. Okay, the doc is going to bring, he's going to bring the phone book of receipts out for this one. This is a very important conversation and narrative to have because, often it teeters on people not having enough information and proof to be founded in which way they are, observing themselves in time and space. And it's very important to have an idea of what your coordinates are. You feel me? I would think for manifestation reasons, you should want to know where you exist at any given time and what's going on around you. And it's time to review everything that has been told to us, specifically by the people who are responsible for relaying information to us, that are telling us everything that they're showing us is CGI. Um, I've been amazed at the James Webb Telescope photos, but I'm like, if you can see to the edge of the universe, how you can't see subatomic particles inside of the cell? How we can't get a picture of an isolated virus yet? You know what I'm saying? But you
We're going to
got
break that down. We're going to break that down in it. We're going to show you how they're creating the
look.
universe on
I ran
computer.
down. Yeah, I ran down on that on in Greenbelt in September of last year. They wouldn't let me in, of course, but
Of
they
course.
had a little museum, on the outskirts, and they were showing, what I'm saying, the screens and everything. And I'm like, you trying to tell me that this glass contraption is floating through astro? I'm like, the Wi-Fi don't even work in here. I can't
I
even
know,
look. You
yo, how about when Nixon got a phone call from the moon, and you can't get bars down the
You know
block,
what I'm saying?
you
So
know?
yeah, it's like, even if I wasn't an adherent to the information of flat Earth, that
Mm,
the round Earth community has so many questions that go unanswered and so many contradictions, and the fact that the people positioned on that line are just bold faced lies and everything else that they do.
mhm,
So just by default, we have to, look at them with a skeptical eye to be like, we got to put this through the ringer as well, just
mhm.
because y'all represent it. You feel me? And I
Yeah.
know that what you represent is a falsehood. Um, so yeah, I'm interested to hear the information.
Well, you should hear.
It's a very riotous community that
Mhm.
you belong to. So
Well,
I
you should
think
hear what
that
Brother King Simon, beloved brother, he went up to, what's his name? What's the name of the black astrophysicist? Neil deGrasse Tyson.
yeah, Neil deGrasse,
And
yeah,
Neil deGrasse wanted to, he wanted Neil deGrasse to do a kind of a discussion with me over flat
yeah,
Earth. So he obviously must have seen what I was doing, because I did do it on it, and he refused him. And
yeah.
I know
Neil
he
deGrasse sound
Neil
wild.
deGrasse, yeah, Neil the Ass Tyson or deGrasse Tyson. He essentially is a buffoon, essentially a very wound up buffoon that's egotistically structured so that if you're not listening to him and you don't pay attention to him and you don't believe everything he says, he starts getting unwind. And you begin to see him start getting agitated because you're challenging his authority.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm going
he
to break
gets
that down as
doesn't take
well.
that well.
Yeah, he doesn't take
We familiar
criticism well.
with we familiar with his father at all?
No,
Okay.
no.
Yeah.
I don't doubt where he came from because essentially he reminds me of that kid in the aisle, European kid in the aisle who's talking back at his mother and cussing at her, and he doesn't get his way. He lays down and starts kicking a tantrum. That's who he reminds me of. He does not stay.
Indeed.
He first of all, you remember when he was there and they asked him, "Is the Earth what do you call it, flat?" He says, "No, it's round. It's kind of flat. It's kind of bulging at the equator. It's oblate." And then he comes back next time. He says, "It's pear shaped." So what is it? It's oblate or is it pear shaped? What is he talking
You
about?
know,
And people are not attacking him for this nonsense he's given to our people. You see? So he tries to use his celebrity and his credentials to offset critical thinking and questions that essentially have to do with his very science, the science that he represents. He doesn't want anybody like myself or anybody to challenge him because essentially quantum physics is a religion. Everything that
mhm.
quantum physics deals with is theory, it's belief, it's the use of certain things that work and then projecting a gigantic thesis around the thing that you've discovered by putting two things together, two atoms together, two this together. They're very sophisticated with taking what already is and twisting it and warping it. But when it comes down to asking them, for instance, I have an entire section on gravity. And when you listen to the crap that they talk about as far as gravity is concerned and what they attribute to gravity, you'll say this is ridiculous. It's still a theory. So everything they're working with is a theory. What they do know, they will never reveal to you. Like for instance, they keep pushing this buffoon, this oaf named Albert Einstein. Einstein was an idiot. Einstein essentially stole everything that they essentially in the Ashkenazi community, in the Zionist community, they pushed him through the incredible network of their media. He got all of the accolades against all of the scientists I'm going to show you were the ones who were putting down deep sciences. The E equals MC squared that he used and is now being used is a farce. It is still theory. It has not been proven.
Yeah.
Though
Theory of relativity.
everything that they come together to actually attribute to it, they try to pigeonhole it into E equals MC squared. And that's how they keep you and me ignorant of moving forward scientifically on how to develop what we do intellectually into a reality.
Well, I mean, honors and kudos to you. I first learned about Dr. Oyibo, Dr. Gabriel Oyibo through you and your
Yeah.
platform and, things that you were doing with the good brother who brought forward the grand unified theorem. And when he laid that out and juxtaposed it against the theory of relativity,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying? I think that
Yeah.
he laid that down pretty well.
Well,
Where,
just don't hold on to your
yes,
thoughts.
I'm
The
listening.
theory of
Mhm.
relativity you'll come to find was created to offset what it is that the Michelson-Morley experiment, that actually did an experiment to see whether or not the Earth was in motion. After Morley actually came out with their thesis and showed that the Earth did not move, the theory that he created, relativity, was created to offset that. So the theory of relativity really was never proven. It was set up as a bulwark against us investigating further why it is that their experiment, the Michelson-Morley experiment, showed that the Earth was not moving. And in my program, in the webinar, I will show you piece by piece, scientist by scientist, what they found out.
Right. So the Earth is stationary, and
Yes,
where does exist? Where does it exist in a quadrant of time and space? If it's a fixed, is it a fixed location?
it is a fixed location on a plane of existence. And the plane of
Right.
existence, essentially, what we look at as third density is
Hmm.
a compression zone. It's a compression zone that deals with densities. That's why there's no such thing as gravity. Gravity is what they use to ascribe a particular energy based in electromagnetic energy. So density, the density within the envelope that we call air or atmosphere, your density deals with the velocity that which you fall. It is not gravity pulling you. It is your density, essentially your weight, that's bringing you down inside of a spectrum of energy, which is essentially water, because that's what air
Hmm.
is. Air is nothing more than
Right.
qualified water. So the density of the air that we have right now, as opposed to the weight that's falling through it, that's what's happening. That's what's really going on. There's nothing pulling. Because if it was gravity, then why is it the clouds ain't coming down? How is it that birds, which are little tiny animals, can actually lift off of it if there's such a great pulling energy as they say? It's nonsense.
Right. I tend to think about when I'm in a plane and I see a density of clouds, then I see another density layer of clouds, and
Hmm.
then there's everything else that's underneath it.
Hmm.
And oftentimes I will look up and don't see a second or thicker layer of clouds that you fly over when you can't see nothing through it. You like, oh, that would be considered an overcast, but why did I just land and the sky is perfectly blue?
Hmm.
And we and then I know from my name being blue that the sky ain't blue and neither is the ocean. So and we already live on an illusionary, if they want to call it a plane or a ball or a marble or whatever they want to call it, it's an illusion because it ain't blue. And they tell you we live on a blue planet. That's not true because the
Hmm.
water ain't blue and the sky ain't blue. So
Right.
that's an illusion to
Well,
begin with, right? So
you,
we
yeah,
are participating. Oh, I'm reaching. Okay.
yeah. Wait till you see what happens
Yeah.
against the dome and what they call the lightning that comes off the dome up in the
It
upper
was blue.
atmosphere. Hmm.
Yeah. Um, yes, it is a lot. There's so many questions that I do have, but I think that they would be more qualified if I got my ticket and showed up to class, what I'm saying, and sat there for because I ain't too grown for a headache, what I'm saying? Yeah, Dr. Phil used to send me home with my head split, like, and that was because my neurons had to recalibrate, and where lies were once lodged, they no longer had residency. They got kicked in their posterior, like, get up out of here, lie. And then they were this, so they was free radicals. So now I had a headache because I'm like, then you blow them out with snot, you know what I'm saying? And then you don't got the headache no more. And that's how stuff used to happen. Like he would loosen up, you know, like
Yeah, it's time to evict those neurons because they've been there too
I'm a
long.
victim.
They've been squatters in your
Uh,
reality, taking up your space for growth and intelligence and stuff. Yeah, same thing with
yeah,
me.
yeah.
If you're not maintaining yourself as a student, if you're not staying a student
Yeah.
throughout your life, then essentially you think you've become constipated and you've stopped at that point in time because your thoughts
Uh,
essentially are time, so you're stuck in that period of time in the past.
I just, yeah,
So
I reflect like when we got certain information, how we were very aggressive with it initially in the early phases, because you're fighting up against ignorance, and someone is always trying to tell you what it ain't, and you know what it is. So I would say this has been a very tough space to learn in because the people are very aggressive with this information. So if I could come and hear it from somebody who don't want to beat it into me and pause, and they're like very respectful, of, our we showing up as students. I'm obviously showing up to learn something. You don't got to teach me and beat me in the head at the same time. You feel me? I just want to learn. Like, don't take it out on me that I've been lied to the same way everybody else has. And I got questions, right? Because we have been thoroughly indoctrinated for quite a while. And it's become a permanent fixture in how we perceive and build up our reality. You know what I'm saying? So, like everything else, when the information came along and people were taking a religion away from certain people as crutches, they was kicking and screaming. Everybody didn't just give it up smooth. You feel me? Some people put up a fight, right? Some people needed certain questions qualified because there was now an entire restructuring of their foundation that had to take place. So I want to thank you, for being one of the very few that has brought this information forward and has still delivered it in a familiar family way. You know what I'm saying? Teaching us like we are family. You know what I'm saying? Like you actually do care about the people that you're bringing this information to. That's a vital part as well. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know
well,
if you know about the TikTok generation.
well, I know the TikTok generation been bamboozled. The Chinese been seriously screwing with the people in TikTok. But I do know that there was a story in TikTok around
Mm-hmm.
Jamie Foxx that I got about 3 or 4 days ago from my source over in Singapore. That they had found out that he succumbed to a blood clot in the brain that left him blind because he submitted to a tattoo. Let's just say, and the tattoo at that point uh, was toxic, and
Yes.
that's the best.
Toxic tattoo.
I'll leave it right there. Toxic tattoo.
Right.
And so what happened?
Toxic tattoo.
Don't believe all that stuff with Diddy because they want to bring they're down to bring Diddy down anyway. They're through with him. They're done with him. They're done with hip hop actually, which essentially has made its course. It's run its course. It doesn't have the same validity anymore because there are a lot of people that are growing out of it at this point. It's not really hip hop. That's the problem. It turned into some kind of toxic what they call rap. The true hip
Right.
hoppers, the ones who were the elder kings and queens back in the day who were talking righteous, those are gone now. But their time for revelation and elevation is coming back because they're beginning to see how the what do I call the colonization of black culture once again. If you go overseas and you see in TikTok and all the rest of these Instagram, you're seeing a lot of these white kids are dancing to our old music, to Michael Jackson, to all of the old stuff that I came up with, funk and so forth. They're over there doing their dancing. They're dancing. They actually are taking our culture, and you're seeing it in Japan and everything. Yeah, sure. Hip hop is around the world, but you're not making the money on hip hop. The hip hop, all
Right.
this is going to, the Ashkenazim. So essentially, right now, there has to be a renaissance in what we call black music. It has to go back to instrumentation and it has to go back to the positive energy, words that used to uplift our community. They just shoved it into the church, which essentially now has become polluted. The things that used to uplift us on the radio every day when we turned on the radio is now getting us depressed and angry, because they're talking more about whoring and scoring and I'm this. It's all about this narcissism. The rap today is a narcissistic church of people talking all about themselves and what they do
Yeah.
and how bad they are, how good they are. We never
Personal
did all
worship.
that. Yeah. So essentially, when the time comes, music is what's going to be part of the savings grace for our culture. We have to get rid of the toxicity in our music today, and this stuff with Beyonce, lauding her as a queen and all this stuff. You could tell that this generation is looking for leadership. So they're going. All these toxic entities are being shoved at them because they're looking for that Messiah energy. And they're going to put it on the feminine principle at this time. So Beyonce is going to be the one that deals with that. And then you're going to have Cardi B, who's actually talking to presidents. When you have these kinds of toxic materials, people talking to them, then you begin to see exactly what it is they have in store for us and our children. And you and your particular priesthood, I would call it, of brothers, positive brothers that are out there doing the work, you
Sisters.
have to bring
Right.
up, yes, brothers, I'm talking just to you right now.
Right.
There's the sisters that are involved as well, which I'm definitely give kudos to. But what I'm very, very, what you call anal about is the brothers. The
Hmm.
brothers are the ones have to actually step forward. I'm not dealing with the sisters in that light as leadership because they can't lead. Women are not supposed to have the kind of power that they've been given because they will always default to their nature using that power. And it is always about you training men how to lead, bring them up in moral and ethical turpitude. You have to bring them up as leaders and
Hmm.
not followers and people just sniffing after women. Women with power never happened until after they stopped hemorrhaging. You cannot give power to an entity who hemorrhages 5 days a week in the month because that completely destroys and distorts her chemistry and her ability to reason and to make proper decisions. She can't do it for herself. How's she going to do it for the rest of a tribe or for what do you call it? And I know you hating me out there, sisters, but you know I'm talking the truth. Men
Um,
need to come and step up and start to leadership. And it's up to you, brothers, to start bringing these young brothers into leadership through ethics, through morality, and through the study of understanding of what it is to be a leader, period.
yeah. That part right there, you know, uh,
The hate,
honest,
the
yeah.
hate's coming. The hate's coming.
No,
Yeah, I'm gonna
a
weather it.
woman in all of her honesty knows that she wants a man in a leadership position.
Hmm.
And yeah, when she's mincing, she's like, look, you got it. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Um,
It's a hemorrhage
is
that has to be cured. That's a particular
yeah.
part of hers, and I mean, with us, it's our lust. As men, our lust has to be cured. We have to understand what to do with that energy, how to channel it back through pranic yoga. The woman, she has to stop bleeding because most of her nutrients that actually works to help her to think properly is
Well,
leaking every month.
I
And it's
know
in
they
my
have
book, The
right.
Wounded Womb, and it shows the scientific information in my book, The Wounded Womb. It shows the scientific information about what happens to a woman as her lining of her womb strips every month. She's
So
losing a lot of her own nutrients that maintains her sanity.
we know that through dietary change, I've seen women go from bleeding from 7 days to three. Are
I've
you are
seen it
you
to one.
suggesting that there's a way for them to reduce that
Yeah.
to one, you said,
Yes.
or to one or to none?
One to none. What happened was a drop or two. We remember because back in the days when I was married to Queen Afua, that's
Mhm.
what we were doing. We were helping sisters to come down to 1 to 2 days, and it would be just coming out in a couple of drops. And
And
it's
how,
a nonsense to really believe that they have to bleed in order to be fertile. That's
okay,
a lie.
I just want to ask: is that an applicable procedure? Is that something that we can
Yes,
implement
yes, that's
in
something
real
that you can
time?
follow. Yeah.
And where can a woman go to get that information? Because I know
Well,
throngs of women that if they could trade in one day for three or one day for seven, they're gonna line up and sign up. So
that's what they did. That's what they did
I'm
back in
just
the day.
saying, let's lead them to this
Go ahead and
information.
go ahead and ask the sisters that were actually coming to the so-called sacred woman what it is we were doing back then. Huh? They know. And the thing is that women now have taken on the, the stewardship of men. They've lost their femininity. They've lost their power. As soon as you start turning a woman into a man, she's lost her power. Look at what they're doing to these with these transgenders.
Whew.
The men are becoming better women now. You opened up feminism, opened it up. I want to be a woman. All I have to do is identify. I don't care if I have a swinging penis. I'm a woman. So I'm going to play. I'm going to play. I'm going to swim against you. I'm going to play basketball against you. It's like
Now,
what Chappelle said.
once
Chappelle
again,
said
let me
if LeBron identifies as a woman, where he will make 950 points in a
let
game,
me
yeah.
let me preference this for you, Doc. I'm just gonna help you out here because once again, a lot of people say a lot of things about things that you may say, but once again, you were the first one 10 years ago sounding the alarms on the dangers of letting transitional men, aka transvestites, play women's sports. You were first speaking about women competing on the level of, the aggressive sports, weightlifting and football. And all of those articles have furnished in the last 2 years speaking about the damage on a woman's physiology and contact extreme sports. So all of that stuff has already been backed up by science,
Mhm.
but also, the unfairness of having a man put on a wig and lipstick and now find a through way, right? Playing the loopholes, getting into women's sports, competing with women and ravishing them in that field,
Look at the one. Look
totally
at the MMA guy.
demoralizing their
How about
competitors. The women think that they're not, for lack of a better term, woman enough to compete. They start questioning their entire identity because they're going up against a man in a competitive way that should never have been set up to begin with. You know what I'm saying?
yeah? How about the MMA? When that dude who I forgot his name, he identified as a woman. Now he calls himself a woman. Cracked this woman's orbital bone with one punch. Okay. Now I got something to tell you here. Check this out. Do you know that they did a survey and it's 90% of women who support the transgenders actually participating against women. It's women that's destroying themselves. Now, if you go to that place, who's the boy who was the bud? Who's the dude who was the Bud Light? What's his name? The guy who did the Bud Light. The
Oh
guy who
yeah,
says, I'm a little girl,"
I don't know
right?
the name, but I know it's, yeah.
Got his name. I really don't even want to know his name. I just know that there's a dude that was out there saying he was a little girl and now he's a woman, but he was a little girl. They got him doing tampons. They got him doing all kind of sports bras and the whole 9 yards. They got a dude doing sports bras. Okay, so now, do you know that on his site, I think it's either Instagram, what's the other one that Musk took over?
Twitter, Twitter,
Twitter, right?
yes.
In his line, do you
Dylan.
know?
It says
Yeah,
name Dylan.
Dylan. Yeah, Dylan. Do you know that 90% of the people talking about him in a positive way on his thread were women?
I
That's
wouldn't
why
mind listening.
you cannot give power to women. Not at this time. Not with this
They,
generation of
I mean,
feminized
they
women.
right. They seem to be the biggest proponents of this agenda for whatever reason,
Self-destruction.
without understanding that it's edging them out.
Self-destruction.
Anytime that you change someone's definition in a dictionary, then you are encroaching upon the definitive nature. If I could change your definition, I could bump you out. That's the rules. If I
That's
can change the definition of you, right? And we saw it with how they reclassified us as a people. We are seeing it happen in real time now, and they're reclassifying an entire agenda, and it's being allowed.
yep.
And they don't understand the damages with that. Because at the same time, when they did that, the Church of England also came out and said that God is not a he, it's a pronoun, it's fluid, right? It's with the same day that Pope Francis came out and said that homosexuality is not a crime or not a
Right.
sin.
And the hey
Right.
is not a masculine. It's taken from Yud Hey Vav Hey.
Right.
The hey is
That's the
that
grammar
part of
time.
it. The
Right.
part, the yud, the I is the unknowable. The hey is
Right.
the knowable, or the
Right.
unknown. which is what we worship and we in our studies. Yud Hey Wav is actually the hooks that hooks us to the reality that we are actual gods. And so, if you're dealing with the Yud Hey Wav Hey, that came from ancient Kemet, and the specific four-letter word for God at that time was Hu He, Huhi. That's where Yud Hey Wav Hey came from.
Hmm.
Came out of ancient Kemet.
Indeed.
Hmm.
So with all of these changes taking place somewhat simultaneously, again, do you see that as being part of the agenda? Is there more of a far reacher imperative when it comes into changing by way of definition what a quote unquote woman is, and then none of it is mentioning her womb?
Indeed, indeed, you had it right in the head. See, there's two different sides that I teach my students. There is definition and description. In other words,
Hmm.
if you're defining something, you're actually going to the essence of it. If you're describing something, you're only seeing the surface of it. So everything that we've been given so far is a description of our reality. So that's why we've put all of those descriptions into words, and that further codifies the reality into our mind, into our frontal lobes. To define something is to open up another part of yourself, what we call the first eye, and then that definition, it comes to the essence of the thing. To define something is to define the essence of it. They're telling you they're conflating defining with description. So when they tell you the Webster's dictionary defines something, it doesn't. It just simply gives you a surface description about what it
Yes.
is you're looking at. So we have maybe a few minutes left. I just want to say thank you so much to Brother Rich. Thank you, and to Brother King Simon, and especially to you, my brother Pillar,
Yes,
Blue
indeed.
Pill, to give
Again,
love to your brother
this is a
Red.
throwback to our one up on a frequency. Um, you
Yeah.
know, shout out to my brother Black Dot. I see he's in the building in the
Oh,
Urban
he's
X.
in the building. Black
Yes,
Dot, much
indeed.
love
Shout out to Black
to
Dot.
you and your family.
Um,
Definitely.
and
So
again, uh, we want to Dr. Valentine. Okay, King Simon said that you'll be on the program on the 11th of June.
yes,
King Simon, if you're in the building, or Brother Rich, please drop the link in the chat so the family can catch the early bird tickets. We want you to grab your tickets first, family. Get your seats, right? Get them early. Come up in the building, let people know, put the word out. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be a family affair at the end of June. We're going to pile in the room and
okay.
listen to the doc do what the doc does best. You know what
One
I'm saying?
last thing, I want to. If there's any problems with the site, I can give you an email that you can go to. Please put this down. The email is sunnu 777 at Gmail. Once again, S is in science, NNU 777 at Gmail. If you're having a problem, just put the word webinar in all capital letters in the subject box, and then I will respond to you. That's one thing. The other thing I want to tell you about is coming up this Sunday. My wife, Dr. Nalani, who's been a warrior. Once you know her story, so she's
Right.
written a book that's going to come out, and it's going to blow your mind. This
Mm,
new book she's written of her survival, and I'm not going to give you too much, but she's going
okay.
to be giving a health seminar, half-hour Zoom program this Sunday at I believe it's at 8 o'clock, 8 to 8:30, and it's go up to Zoom, and the ID is her telephone number, and that's 646-220-3603. Please put that down. 646-220-3603. That's her ID. And the password is peace. 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 Okay? Definitely tune in. It's a half hour of chock filled information on health and what it is that JP, you know what I'm talking about with the juice and what it has done for her and what it's going to do for everybody else, and for the brothers and sisters that I recommended to. They are all coming back with talking about flying colors and how wonderful it's been for them.
Yes, indeed.
Again, everybody, please, if you are really interested in actually decoding the matrix that has had us in this illusion for the last 150 to actually 700 years, because the Bible is only about 700 years old. It was essentially sent out. The new Bible, the Bible that you're talking about, was revised in the 17th century because there was no such person as the name Jesus. The letter J was not actually introduced into the English lexicon until the 17th century. So if your Bible has a Jesus with a J, then that is not the actual real Bible. That's the one that was actually twisted. The King James, which was a black man, he came out with a different version. You should go to the King James version and actually compare it to the International and all the rest of them. But again, the Bible is not about Jesus. It's not about all of that. They made it that way. The Bible, once you understand the interpretations that are hidden in the letters, the dead letters, once you understand the dead letters and what's living within those letters, you understand that it's a book of science. It's the human science that they have made into a big Disney corporate presentation and production. But anyway, my brother Blue, thank you
Yes,
so much
indeed.
for this time. And again, once again, Brother Rich, thank you for this time. Hopefully, we do it once more before the program,
Absolutely.
on the 25th.
And shout out to my brother Amin Ra,
My
my guy.
son,
That's
loving
right.
my son. Mwah. The brother's
Yes,
doing
indeed.
so much now. I wanted to just, I'm a proud papa. See,
I know that's right.
my chest is like this because my
That's
son is
my
kicking
guy.
it out there in
He's out here
movies.
moving.
Yeah, he's moving out there, and I'm really, really happy. So happy with my daughter too, how she's
Shout out
accomplished
to
so
her.
much and teaching so much.
Indeed.
Anyway, enough of
And
me
yeah,
bragging.
can you repeat that phone number one last time? They are asking me to get that repeated for your wife's
Uh,
wedding
yeah, my wife's telephone number is for the ID.
for
You
the
go to
ID.
Zoom. You go to Zoom.com, and the ID is her number, her telephone number, 646-510-6702, and the pass code, the pass is peace, PEACE. And if you were looking to get the Juice Plus, by the way,
Hmm.
you can text my daughter-in-law. Text her first, and her name is Nanette Hill. Nanette Hill. Text her first because it is vital. Your health is going to be paramount in these days coming because they're ripping apart the food, they're destroying it, they're taking over your food, and they're going to give you bugs. They're going to give you all kinds of garbage, twisted garbage that they want you to eat. And the Juice Plus is going to be your savior. You trust me. Her name is Nanette. You can text her first. Please don't call. Text her first at 404 543 3245. Once again, 404 543 3245. Nanette, Nanette Hill. And for any of our services, you can call 800 847 1291. This is for our services.